So at about this time yesterday, you seemed pretty confident that David Johnston was going to call for a public inquiry. Your thoughts today, 24 hours later, knowing what we know now and having time to digest Johnston's reasoning, what do you think?
I'm thinking that Pierre Poilievre is right. You don't have to be a conservative to agree with Poilievre. And it's not just conservatives who are dissatisfied with what happened yesterday. Canadians are. Since this broke at noon yesterday, Marcia, I've been doing media in French and in English across the country. And I have to tell you, I've yet to meet a single senior observer of the political scene who thinks, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Sure, Johnston's saying, move along, nothing to see here. Justin Trudeau met the Chinese president and had a set-to with him in Bali, Indonesia at the end of November because his staff put out. Trudeau was upset with Chinese government interference in Canadian elections. Since then, they've been doing everything they can to camouflage and to put a lid on this whole thing. It's not working. Johnston is an honorable gentleman, but the minute it became clear that the Trudeau Foundation, and he was in a key role at the Trudeau Foundation the day he got named special rapporteur, the minute it was clear that that was part of what had to be looked at, Mr. Johnston should have done the honorable thing and stepped back. Instead, he persisted and he signed and he had this press conference yesterday, and he's telling us this. I've looked at the evidence that the people who work for Trudeau have given me, because we don't know what the whole evidence is, and that's the entire problem. And I'm satisfied that most of the media reports are incomplete. And the government, how can he possibly make that affirmation? No minister and the prime minister failed to act. How can he make that very blanket affirmation when there's been no contradictory proceedings, no ability to cross-examine, no ability to ask people under oath whether they have provided all of the information? We're talking about the security establishment that has been under fire. They're the ones who are deciding what they're going to show and what they're not going to show. Their life work is being clever about what they show and don't show in terms of documents. And Mr. Johnston is trying to convince Canadians that he knows that nothing happened with any of the ministers, that there's been no reticence to act, even when Bill Blair, who stood there at that press conference, took months and months to approve something as simple as a warrant to go after some of the information on one of the people who, it turns out, had close links to the Liberal Party. So Canadians look at this and it simply does not pass the smell test.
But Johnston says the information, Tom, is too sensitive to be dealt with in a full-on public inquiry.
He's no doubt right. But that doesn't stop the Americans from having Robert Mueller out there investigating Russian interference in the 2016 campaign and compelling the production of documents and forcing people to testify as witnesses and cross-examining them. The CIA gets brought before Congress all the time. They'll provide documents. Some of them will be redacted. You put in safeguards. You protect the trade craft. You protect the sources. That was one of the arguments that you heard in the clip before. Oh, well, you know, people's lives could be in danger. Well, nobody in Canada in the right mind would want to put somebody's life in danger. So you put in safeguards, and what can be made public gets made public. But you cross-examine. You have a contradictory proceeding. You hear both sides. Here, none of that has taken place. And yet he's saying, well, we're going to have a kumbaya moment. We're going to have public hearings, and we'll talk about the failings of the security establishment, which has been part of the ruse by the people in the Prime Minister's office for months now, saying, oh, well, we didn't know about Michael Chong. It never made it up to us. Well, it turns out that it did make it up to them, but they did nothing about it. So these are all the things that they would love to keep a lid on. This is an attempt to distract. They've created a new set of questions. They're saying, well, let's find out what it's like to live in a diaspora community of an ethnic minority in Canada, and let's try to help them going forward for the future. No. Canadians want to know what happened with Chinese government interference in the 2019 and 21 campaigns. They keep saying, well, it didn't affect the result of the election. That's not the question. The question is, did it take place? So if it were, let's say, 6 or 8 or 10 conservatives who might have had their result affected, they're simply saying, well, it would have been a minority Liberal government anyway. That's true. But it doesn't mean that it didn't affect the Canadian political landscape, the state of play, the relative forces between the parties. And it is so fundamental in our democracy, Marcia. What is more important than the election in our democracy? And we've got a foreign power interfering in it. And now we've got somebody saying, we're not really going to look at this stuff. We're going to talk about other things instead. That's why Mr. Trudeau seemed very happy yesterday afternoon. But instead of letting him off the hook, this is going to be drop, drop, drop. This is going to be water torture for him because it's not going to go away, and Canadians are definitely not satisfied. And it's not Conservatives necessarily who are not satisfied. As I say, people across the country are saying this doesn't wash.
Last question for you this morning. Those with a more cynical view might say, what is the point of having a public hearing? What will that resolve? What will come out in the wash from that? And you say what, Tom?
The truth. Because you can't get to the truth unless you can confront the documents.
A hearing, not an inquiry. The hearings, what will they amount to?
Oh, the hearings are going to be a feel-good moment, a nice fatherly approach. Johnston's named himself to do that because Trudeau gave him this second mandate. So he says, well, who better than me, David Johnston, to do this? So he'll be the very intelligent person that we saw yesterday. He's somebody, by the way, I have nothing but the greatest admiration for on a personal level. I know him well. And he's a wonderful Canadian and a great person. But the minute it was clear that the Trudeau Foundation was going to be under the magnifying glass, it was up to him to step away. And he continued. He wanted to make sure that this had his name on it. Now he thinks he's going to be able to hold these public hearings. First of all, he can't. Second, with any credibility, it's not that he's not a credible individual, but the whole background to this. Yesterday, he said Frank Iacobucci, a very respected former Supreme Court judge, by the way, had said that he was not in a conflict of interest because of his role at the Trudeau Foundation. What was the date of that letter from Mr. Iacobucci? Was it at the beginning of his mandate? Presumably so. And if so, did Iacobucci renew that once all of the information about the resignations at the Trudeau Foundation, the people who stepped down saying, look, you're refusing to recuse yourself, and those board members that stayed were the only ones who wouldn't respect the fact that they couldn't continue given the Chinese Communist Party involvement in giving money to the Trudeau Foundation. That's what this is about. It's about the allegations of Chinese government so-called police stations in Canada. It's about putting in the fix in elections, whether it's municipal elections, the mayoralty election in Vancouver. There's clear indications on that. What about the fact that even in Doug Ford's caucus, somebody had to step down, and now we're talking federally. So at all three levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, we've got this information, and now we're being told, we're going to have hearings. You're not going to get to testify. You're not going to get to contradict. You're not going to get to cross-examine. We'll just talk about this, and we'll have this nice figure in David Johnston presiding over the thing. That's what doesn't wash, Marcia.
Tom Mulcair for us. Tom, thank you so much. Good to see you this morning.